Praise be Jesus and Mary. Today's gospel shows to us the great compassion our Lord had on the crowds. As we're told, his heart was moved with pity for them, and he cured their sick. Today we honor a true shepherd in the image of Christ, St. Alphonsus Liguori, who also had great compassion on the crowds and did all he could to help cure them, to heal them, to save souls. St. Alphonsus was born in the Kingdom of Naples in 1696. He was very gifted intellectually, so as a young man at the age of 16, he graduated with 2 doctorates, one in canon law, the other in civil law. And naturally afterwards, he worked in the profession as a lawyer. He excelled in that profession. He was, for some time, unbeatable, in every court case. He was so gifted in his argumentation. Until one day he lost his first court case, and this was between a duke and a grand duke, and it opened up Alphonsus's eyes to the vanity of the things of this world and more earthly pursuits. And he was inspired at that time to break with the world, no longer pursue the career as a lawyer, but rather to follow the call to the priesthood, which he sensed God was calling him to. So he did that and was ordained a priest at the age of 30. Some years later, as a priest, Alphonsus was the chaplain to a group of nuns, and during a retreat that he gave to the nuns, St. Alphonsus investigated into a vision that one of the nuns was reported to have had, and which concerned the order of nuns and the direction, perhaps they were to go to. And so Alphonsus looked into the matter and deemed the vision authentic, and this would lead to the community of nuns changing somewhat their rule and also their style of habit. This will be the beginnings of the Redemptoristines. They look to St. Alphonsus as their founder. And it's interesting, that St. Alphonsus is known for the missionary congregation that he did found later, for men, to give missions, especially to rural Catholics, living in the countryside. They would be called the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, or the Redemptorists. But the nuns actually preceded them. It's an interesting case. In any case, from 1726 to 1752, St. Alphonsus dedicated himself to this preaching, to the various Catholic communities in the countryside, and he sought them out. He knew that they were being neglected greatly, the spiritual needs of those who kind of lived far from the city. So he and his members of his community went out to them and gave missions, kind of parish missions. Really gave a new vitality, to the parishioners in their parishes. He once said concerning his preaching, "I have never preached a sermon which the poorest old woman in the congregation could not understand." So he did not preach to impress, which was a common thing at the time, and perhaps it's always a temptation for the preacher to preach, to impress his congregation. But not St. Alphonsus. He was only concerned about the spiritual good of those in the congregation. Every single person he would be preaching to, he had in mind the good of their souls, rightly so. St. Alphonsus is known for his outstanding abilities as a confessor, too, and also for that time somewhat of a needed change that he himself put into practice and recommended to other priests, to give a full attention to the needs of the penitent, to treat them very compassionately and mercifully. Sometimes there's need to be a bit stern, but to make sure that, again, the primacy is the good of the soul there before you as a confessor. So he wrote books on confession practice, on moral theology. And as for these works, especially that St. Alphonsus has been named by the Church a doctor of the Church and the patron saint of moral theologians. After some years, good 13 years or so, leading his new congregation, St. Alphonsus was named bishop of St. Agata dei Goti in Benevento, something that he was mortified by. He didn't want to become a bishop. That's always the case with the saints. Usually they don't want to be in such high offices with so great responsibilities. But he accepted it, of course, as God's will and carried out that duty as a bishop so outstandingly well, a tireless shepherd. We're told that he made a vow to never waste a moment. Never wasted a moment, so tireless. So that's something that we can learn from. Never waste a moment of our time. Always doing good with that gift of time the Lord has given to us every day. At age 79, he resigned as a bishop and tended to the needs of his own congregation kind of full-time, which at the time it suffered from internal divisions, unfortunately. And these would not be resolved until after the saint's death, which was on this day in 1787. He died at the age of 91. Now, St. Alphonsus is still well known today, as you know, perhaps one of your own favorites. He is one of the most read, he is the most read spiritual author of all time. We're told that after the Bible, the Imitation of the Christ is the single most read book. But St. Alphonsus, in his collective works, he is the single most read author. So that tells us something. His works are reliable. They give us solid Catholic doctrine and spirituality. So we can always go back to him, always go to the works of St. Alphonsus, his ascetical writings, which include the Holy Eucharist, the Glories of Mary, the Way of Salvation and Perfection, the Way of Divine Love, and the visits to the Blessed Sacrament and to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So in your own spiritual reading, meditation, make good use of what the best that the Church has to offer, and certainly among those are the works of St. Alphonsus Liguori. Praise be Jesus and Mary.